What's going on, everybody? Ryan's Baseball Roundup here, back with another video. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing a tier list of all the MLB teams. I'm going to be telling you which teams I think are World Series contenders, playoff teams. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the like button if you enjoy these type of videos. And let's get straight into it. Alright, so here's our tier list. Our different categories are World Series contenders, meaning I think they have a legit shot at winning the World Series. Playoff team is like, I think they're pretty much positive they're going to make the playoffs. Fringe playoff team is like they have a chance to make the playoffs still, but it's more likely than not that they won't. Not quite there yet, as they have some good players, but they just haven't put it all together as a team quite yet. Maybe next year is like their team's just really bad in general. So the first team we have is the LA Angels, and looking at the standings for the Angels, they are 11 and a half games out of the division behind the Astros. And for the wild card, they are 7 games out. So I think the Angels are not quite there yet. It's been quite impressive what they've been able to do, being only 1 game 500, with them having Mike Trout out for most of the year. Ohtani's been great, obviously. Anthony Rendon, even when he's been there, he hasn't been good. He's been hurt. Jared Walsh being on the IL really hurt their team. And then moving on to the Astros. The Astros have just been really good overall. They've been having good contributions from pitchers I didn't think could step up, like Luis Garcia. Jose Urquidy's been good. They obviously bought at the trade deadline, getting Kendall Graveman. So I think the Astros are legit World Series contenders. They've really pulled away from the A's in the division. They're 4.5 games ahead of the A's for first place in the division. So I think the Astros are World Series contenders. Now, moving on to the A's, they're obviously 4.5 games out of the division, but looking at them in the wild card, they are they're in the wild card spot, the second wild card spot. But you have the Yankees and the Blue Jays and the Mariners all very closely behind the A's. This is a tough one for the A's. I think they're a fringe playoff team. I think a team like the Yankees or the Blue Jays has a legitimate shot to catch them. I think they're a fringe playoff team. Matt Olson's obviously been going off, but I think Matt Chapman is someone that needs to really step up for them if they're going to make the wild card. They obviously got Starling Marte, but they had to give up Jesus Luzardo, who was a top prospect for them. He hadn't necessarily been producing at the big league level yet, but I think the Marlins could get something out of him. Moving on to the Blue Jays, they are 3.5 games out of the wild card. They're only 1 game behind the Yankees, and their division's very good. So despite the fact that they're 6 games above 500, they are 8 games out of first place. I think the Blue Jays have a really good team. They obviously gave up a lot in Austin Martin and Simeon Woods Richardson to get Jose Barrios, but I think the Blue Jays are not quite there yet. I don't really think it has anything to do with they obviously have talent, but it's just their division's so hard with the Yankees getting Joey Gallo and Anthony Rizzo. I think that the Yankees have a better shot at catching the A's than the Blue Jays do. I really like the Blue Jays' young offense though, with Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Teoscar Hernandez, George Springer starting to hit. So this team is probably going to be good in the future, but I think they just narrowly miss out on the playoffs. Moving on to the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves are in National League East, where it's a very bad division. There's only one team in the whole division that's above 500, and that's the Mets. So despite the fact that the Braves are 2 games below 500, they're only 4 games out of the playoff picture, which means they have still a solid shot to make the playoffs. They obviously got Jorge Soler, Jock Peterson, and Richard Rodriguez at the deadline to give them a better shot at making it. But that Acuna tearing his ACL, that's really going to hurt their chances. So I like the moves they made at the trade deadline to get Jorge Soler, Jock Peterson, and Richard Rodriguez. Those are all moves that are going to help them immediately. But I think that they're not going to end up catching the Mets when it comes to the playoff. So I have them not quite there yet. I think that Acuna injury was probably the difference maker in their season. And then for the Brewers, 7 games ahead of the Reds for first place in the National League Central. So World Series contenders. They've been really good this year. They've had great contributions from guys like Willie Adames that came over. Josh Hader has been good once again. Devin Williams is obviously a good setup man. But they have that three-headed monster in the rotation that's really hard to beat. Freddie Peralta, Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff. The Brewers are sneaky, man. They've really sneaky this year. Not many people are counting them as World Series contenders, but I got them as World Series contenders. Um, Moving on to the Cardinals. Cardinals were been really disappointing this year. A lot of people thought they were gonna win the NL Central after trading for Nolan Arenado, but they just quite haven't lived up to expectations. They're one game above 500, 9.5 games out of first place. They're not even close because of how good the Dodgers and Padres have been. They're 6.5 out. I think the Cardinals rotation, they traded for John Lester and J.A. Happ at the deadline, which is pretty confusing because they're both really old pitchers and they already have Adam Wainwright, who's an old pitcher himself. I think they have good offense and a really good end of the bullpen with Alex Reyes, who's been really good as a closer. Giovanni Gallegos is legit. Genesis Cabrera is good too. But I just think the rotation is really suspect. So I got them as not quite there yet. Even though at the start of the season, I expected them to be in the playoffs. The Cubs, they really just got rid of everybody at the trade deadline. You look at them getting rid of Chris Bryant, Javier Baez, Craig Kimbrell, Anthony Rizzo. The Cubs are 9.5 games out of first place. They obviously have no intentions of competing this year, considering all of those guys I just named that they got rid of at the trade deadline. It's probably pretty bad to be a Cubs fan right now. I'd be sad if I was a Cubs fan. I got the Cubs at maybe next year. With all those pieces they gave up at the trade deadline, I don't see any way at all that they make the playoffs. So I got, and then the Diamondbacks also maybe next year because they're in last place. I think they have the worst record in baseball. Yeah, they do have the worst record in baseball. This team, I knew they were going to be bad. I just didn't know they were going to be this bad. I mean, it hurts that Carson Kelly and Ketel Marte have been hurt for a lot of the year because those are two of their big bats. But Pavin Smith has been good as a rookie, so maybe they have something to look forward to in him. Madison Bumgarner, they're signing from 2 years ago. He still hasn't lived up to all that money they paid him. I believe this is 5 years, $75 million. Moving on to the Dodgers, they obviously traded for Trey Turner and Max Scherzer at the deadline. This Dodger team is 3.5 games ahead of the Padres for the first wild card spot, and in the division in the NL West, I believe they are 3 games behind the Giants for first place. But a lot of people think they're going to sneak up on the Giants for first place. Whether or not they get first place or not, I'm still positive that they're a World Series contender just because of the fact that they added Max Scherzer and Trey Turner. So yeah, I got the Dodgers as a World Series contender. Even though they lost Trevor Bauer, I still think that adding Max Scherzer and being able to put Trey Turner at second base with Corey Seager at shortstop, their offense is pretty much all on the All-Star team at some point in their career. So their offense is just insane. Moving on to the Giants, the team that has the best record in baseball and has surprised the most amount of people. They're 3 games ahead of the Dodgers for first place. They also have the best record in baseball. The big story for the Giants this season has just been their depth overall. You look at guys like Lamont Wade Jr., Thairo Estrada. These are guys that have come up when guys like Evan Longoria, Brandon Belt, even Brandon Crawford have been injured that have just stepped up in a major way. Logan Webb's been really good ever since he's come off the injured list in their rotation. Jake McGee just won Reliever of the Year, or Reliever of the Month, as I'm recording this video. I got the Giants as a World Series contender also. I mean, I know they don't have as big of names as the Dodgers, but I just think that this team could be scary in the playoffs. Moving on to the Indians, they gave away some pieces at the trade deadline, but they also got some guys back. They traded away Cesar Hernandez to the White Sox, and then they also got Miles Straw from the Astros. The Indians are 9 games behind the White Sox for first place. They've had a lot of injuries this year, and in the wild card, they are 6.5 back. We've had a lot of injuries this year. If you look at Shane Bieber is still injured, Aaron Savali is still injured. Their rotation is pretty much decimated by injury. Even Zach Plesac had that broken thumb for a while. Jose Ramirez and Framil Reyes have been good as advertised, but they also traded away Eddie Rosario to the Braves. I have them as not quite there yet. I think the injuries really messed with them. Moving on to the Mariners. The Mariners are 3.5 back. The Mariners traded for Diego Castillo, but they also traded away Kendall Graveman. That was very confusing to me because Kendall Graveman has been one of the best relievers in baseball this year, and I heard that the Mariners clubhouse was very mad at their GM Jerry Dipoto for trading Kendall Graveman, so it obviously didn't go good in the clubhouse. I would have them as a playoff team if they didn't trade away Kendall Graveman, but I have them as a fringe playoff team because there's so many teams in front of them, like the Blue Jays and the Yankees in the wild card. But I still think they have like an okay shot at trying to make the playoffs. Moving on to the Miami Marlins, they traded away Starling Marte at the trade deadline, but they got back Jesus Luzardo. I like that trade for the Marlins in the division, despite the fact that the NL East is the worst division in baseball. They're in last place, 11 and a half games back. I think the Marlins are maybe next year, but they have a really good young rotation. I mean, we didn't even get to see Sixto Sanchez pitch at all this year, and they got Jesus Luzardo. So if you look at that rotation, they already had Pablo Lopez, Trevor Rogers, Sandy Alcantara. That could be a really good young rotation in the future at some point. So I like the trajectory of their team. Also, Jazz Chisholm has been really good this year when he hasn't been injured. New York Mets, I think they're definitely a playoff team. They've had some injuries. They obviously traded for Javier Baez, which is going to make them somewhat better. I think they kind of needed a starting pitcher to really like take them to the next level, like possible World Series contender. But all they got was Trevor Williams, and Trevor Williams, I don't really think that he's good enough to take them from playoff team to World Series contender. So they've been playing not so good of late. They're 4-6 in their last 10 games, but I still think that they're gonna hold on to the NL East division and end up winning. So that's why I have them as a playoff team. The Washington Nationals, they gave up a lot in the trade deadline. They traded away Brad Hand, Kyle Schwarber, obviously Trey Turner and Max Scherzer. I think for the Washington Nationals, it's maybe next year. But they did get a haul back. They got Josiah Gray, who's the top Dodgers prospect, pitching prospect, and Keibert Ruiz, who's a really good catcher. The only reason the Dodgers didn't have him on their major league team is because he was kind of blocked by Will Smith. So I got the Nationals as maybe next year. Obviously, they're going to have to build around Juan Soto. The Baltimore Orioles, they've been pretty bad this year, like really bad, in fact. I got them as maybe next year also. They're the worst team in the American League. They're 37-67, 30 games below 500. Trey Mancini and John Means have been the few bright spots, as well as Cedric Mullins on their team overall. Moving on to the San Diego Padres. I think the San Diego Padres are a playoff team. I see them getting that second wild card spot to face whoever, either the Dodgers or Giants, in the playoffs. It really hurts them, though, that Fernando Tatis Jr. just dislocated his shoulder for the third time. That's pretty concerning if you're a Padres fan. I think it sounds like either he's going to get shoulder surgery at the end of this year or in the off season. Either way, that really hurts their team. Blake Snell, they traded for him in the off season, but he just hasn't been what I expected at all for them. They're four games ahead of the Reds for the second wildcard spot, so the Reds still got a shot, but I think the Padres got it. Manny Machado's been heating up lately. Moving on to the Phillies. The Phillies are in that bad NL East. They're 7.5 games out of the wild card, but their real shot is in their own division. They are 3.5 games out. They bought at the deadline getting Adam Kennedy and Kyle Gibson from the Rangers, which I like both of those moves because now they have a legit 3 starter in Kyle Gibson behind Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. So with those additions, they have a better chance, in my opinion, on sneaking up on the Mets for the NL East division than the Braves. So I have them as a fringe playoff team. They still have a shot. The Pittsburgh Pirates, they've been really bad this year. They traded away Richard Rodriguez and Adam Frazier. They're 40-65. Brian Reynolds has been super good for them, so that's good for Pirates fans, but they're a maybe next year team. The Rangers are also maybe next year. They traded away Joey Gallo, Adam Kennedy, Kyle Gibson. Still got Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who's pretty good. Adolis Garcia has cooled off ever since he made the All-Star game, pretty much. Tampa Bay Rays, I think they're definitely a playoff team. They added Nelson Cruz, but I don't think they're necessarily in the same breath as these four teams. It still could surprise us like they did in 2020 when they went 6 games in the World Series with the Dodgers. But that Tyler Glasnow injury really hurts. Tyler Glasnow I think he's out for the year he might need Tommy John surgery, but they're not sure. He had that UCL injury. They're in first place right now, 1.5 games ahead of the Boston Red Sox for first place. The Yankees and the Blue Jays are obviously farther behind. This Rays team, they're good, but I don't know if they're like World Series contender good. Moving on to the Red Sox. The Red Sox have been another surprise team, just like the Giants. They're 1.5 games out of first place, and they have that wild card spot. They're 3 games ahead of the A's, and for that first wild card spot. The Red Sox have been in first place for most of the year, but the Rays got a little bit hot and took first place. They obviously have Chris Sale, who's doing a rehab stint. He had Tommy John surgery last year or something. So if they could get him back, that would be really good for the rotation. They already traded for Kyle Schwarber, who's going to play first base for them. I would say that they need a really good Chris Sale to be World Series contenders, because right now their rotation, Nathan Eovaldi is their best pitcher, which I think that the teams that are World Series contenders have better like ace pitchers than they do. So I'm not sure that I'm necessarily counting on the Cy Young type caliber pitcher Chris Sale was before he had Tommy John surgery. So I have the Red Sox as a playoff team. Moving on to the Reds. The Reds are only a couple games back of that second wild card spot. They're 4 games out, and they have a shot to gain on the Padres with Tatis being out. So I think the Reds are a fringe playoff team because Joey Votto has gotten hot lately. They traded for Luis Cessa and Justin Wilson, Yankees, so they did buy at the deadline. That offensive combo of Jesse Winker and Nick Castellanos is pretty scary. Luis Castillo has been pitching way better than he was at the start of the year, so that's encouraging for them. On to the Rockies. The Rockies have been better than we expected, specifically at home. Their home record is 33-20, but their road record is 13-40. It's very confusing. I have the Rockies as maybe next year. They didn't trade away John Gray or Trevor Story. I definitely think they could have gotten some prospects back for both of them, but I guess they just decided not to. The Royals, 45-59. They're doing kind of worse than I expected this year. With the additions of Carlos Santana, I expected them to be a little bit better than this. They've been very streaky. They've gotten hot, but then also gotten cold. I think the Royals are not quite there yet. They have some top prospects like Bobby Witt Jr. that could come up next year and make them better. Tigers are also not quite there yet. They've been a happy surprise. They started out after the All-Star break like really hot. They've kind of cooled off, but I think the Tigers could be good in the future. They have guys like Casey Mize, Matt Manning in their rotation. They still have Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green in the farm system. Akil Baddoo has been a nice rookie for them. The Tigers have some promise in the future. The Twins are probably the most disappointing team. I thought that they would turn around their slow start, but they really haven't. They're 44-62. They were obviously sellers at the deadline. I really like the pickups of Austin Martin and Simeon Woods Richardson. When they traded away Jose Barrios, they traded away Nelson Cruz also. The Twins are maybe next year. The White Sox are in first place in their division currently. They've had a lot of injuries, but despite their injuries, they're still in first. With the injuries of Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert, Nick Madrigal, they added Craig Kimbrell in the trade deadline, trading away Nick Madrigal, which makes their bullpen the best in baseball. I got the White Sox as World Series contenders. With all of their injuries they've had, they've still managed to be in first place, and by a large margin. Last team, the Yankees. The Yankees are looking on the wild card spot, looking in. They're a couple games out on the wild card, 2.5 behind the A's. I think the Yankees are a playoff team. With the additions of Joey Gallo, Anthony Rizzo, I think they got a good shot. Their team has been kind of disappointing, but ever since they got Joey Gallo and Anthony Rizzo, they've been producing. So I like those moves for them. Still have Garrett Cole as their ace. He could be scary in a one-game playoff scenario. That was my tier list. I hope you guys all enjoyed. Other than that, this has been Ryan's Baseball Roundup, and I'm out.